it's Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, subscribe, bell notification, thumbs up. If you ever watch a few of my videos, you'll know I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I know there's some snooty ass people out there who are like, audiobooks aren't reading. Yeah, shut up. No one cares for you to come here and shame people for reading in whatever capacity, aside from the fact that people use it for a variety of reasons like disabilities, time crunches, which is a big reason why audiobook usage in libraries is shooting through the roof, because we're making long commutes to work, we all have like 14 billion different jobs, and we're broke as hell because college loans have like bankrupted all of us. So we love audiobooks. They also add a lot of elements that they influence, hopefully a lot of the time, the author, so you can hear name pronounced correctly if it's from a different, if it's a fantasy world or from a different culture influences, if they just have like fantasy names that are kind of weird and you don't know how to pronounce it. But then you can get full radio broadcasts, things like Illuminae. And honestly, this isn't a new concept. Radio shows were popular for a long time before we got television. And there's a reason why we read to children when they're young. That storybook time, that story time at libraries, or that you have with your kids, they've done studies that it's proven to be, there's benefits to it, and that libraries now are also doing them story times for adults and story times for seniors, because it gives us a chance to sit down, listen to the book, maybe how it's supposed to be. If it's an audiobook, listen to how it's intended to be, whether that's a name or a joke or comedy or dialogue, whatever. If they're not for you, they're not for you. That's fine. I know it can be hard to keep your attention on something that's not physically in front of you, but I am a big fan of using audiobooks. I love to listen along while I'm cooking, walking the dogs, especially when it's from a book that is from a different culture, so I can know how to pronounce names correctly, with a lot of influences now coming from like Asian cultures. I'm so excited so I can know how to pronounce characters' names properly. Audiobooks are my friend, and I love listening along and reading the physical book as well. It's relaxing, it helps me get more immersed in the content. So I wanted to give you my top 10 audiobooks that I listened to this year. Honestly, narration can make or break how you enjoy a story, in no particular order. The first one being The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding, the book by Alexandra Bracken. This is a fantastic audiobook. There's specifically in the book, there's this like evil like gremlin in the brain, and like whoever does the voice of that is fantastic. It made me burst out laughing so often. The comedic like tone and pacing, everything is fantastic. It's a really, really solid audiobook. So whoever that narrator was, I'm gonna follow that those narrators. I still have to read along with the second book just because there is a lot of comedy, and sometimes, especially, it's all on the reader. Everyone reads things differently, but I feel like books with comedy in them can really, like, some people just don't pick up on that because comedy is, everyone's different with comedy, but I feel like it comes off much more easily, and the goofiness of it and like the weird like inner monologue crazy thing, it comes off perfectly in the audiobook. Really, really fantastic. I just finished reading this book, so this might sound like a bit of a broken record playing here, but Lovely War by Julie Berry. The audiobook is fantastic. We have multiple voices throughout the whole thing. We have a cast of doing the gods that are having a sort of a court hearing, and they run in parallels to the cast in World War II, in our world in France. So highly, highly recommend. The book itself is fantastic, but I would really highly recommend the audiobook for this one specifically, and I love Julie Berry so much. Red, White, and Royal Blue is another one that has tons of comedy in it, so I feel like it's elevated even more. The book itself is fantastic. If you just read the book in general in whatever capacity and format you seem fit. But the comedy in this comes off like, it's beautiful. Why am I having trouble doing the Italian kiss thing? It's beautiful, the audiobook. There's this one, it's probably my favorite line I've pulled from any of books that I read this year, but like during the election wrap up, there's a character who like the votes are coming in and they're waiting for districts to be called to see who wins the election, and like one character's like, come on Florida, you backyard shooting range motherfuckers, or something like that, and then another character is like, did she just say backyard shooting range? Like, what's happening? Because he's British. I mean, and like whoever narrates these all of these specific people and they're the characters, fantastic job. The comedy is fantastic, the sexy scenes are fantastic. It's just really, really good. I know that might be hard because if you're someone like me and you read those books, even though if you're like, you have your headphones in and then you hear sexy time and then all of a sudden you blush and you think somehow everyone can suddenly hear that. I mean, that happens, but then, like, you also look stupid a couple chapters later when people can't hear what you're reading and you're just like laughing at yourself. But highly recommend the audiobook for Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I'm sad we have to wait until 2021, but I'm so excited for Casey McQuiston's next book coming out. It's supposed to have, like, time travel something in it. It sounds something like it pulled from my brain, so it sounds amazing. I actually just finished reading this one, so I would highly recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown. The narration is a British accent too, which I loved. I was like, okay, I know the author lives in the UK, but like, are we gonna get like an American accent? I would be kind of disappointed if we don't. It's a British accent, and probably my favorite part of the whole thing is I think we say things like differently, obviously in different countries. So like, there were several points, I don't even remember what the specific phrasing was, but like the word like vaginal, and then the audiobook narrator for some reason said like vaginary or something, like just something like it was clearly like a British term instead, but I kept giggling. I don't know why. But the accent really helped take me out of like North American perspective into the British setting, and I just absolutely loved it. It also helped me imagine the main character Red, who is a ginger in the UK. Think of him as Jamie Fraser. So, I mean, take with that what you will. I love the book itself too. It has Black-owned voices, chronic illness-owned voices, and plus-size rap. So, fantastic. Oh, and male domestic abuse survivor. So, it's fantastic across the board, but I'd really highly recommend the audiobook for this one. Not only is The Diviners a thoroughly underappreciated series, even though everyone I talk to seems to have read it or be aware of it or own it, the publisher did the series so dirty on the covers. They've done a cover change like every single book, and none of them are good, except for like the Australian ones, which I really want to get the Australian covers for that series. But the cast itself is insanely diverse, racially, with sexual orientation, with abilities. There's just across the board tons of really good rep, and the book itself is fantastic. The audiobooks are no exception, so thankfully the publishers didn't mess that up. The audiobooks, the narration for this is really, really good. There's a bit of like demon supernormal aspects going on, and I feel like that really, really does come through in how the narration is done. The King of Crows specifically, whoever does that voice, is really good. It really does like create this like creepy, just your body, like I just feel like a tingle in my spine, right? So highly recommend this series in whatever capacity you whatever capacity you see fit. What is wrong with me today? But especially the audiobooks. The audiobooks are fantastic for this series. Teeth in the Mist was a step outside of my comfort zone. Honestly, I think this one is like, the audiobook really does elevate it. It's not just like, oh, it makes it kind of like funny, enjoyable. It really does elevate it. So there's this like creepy demon thing throughout the whole thing. And like, oh my god, the audiobook, like, it gave me goosebumps a few times because like there's like creaking and noises in the background. It's like a radio show. There's creaking noises in the background. There's a like weird demon, like raspy voice thing. It gave me the EBGBs. It really set up the whole book. So I've never read this author before. It's not a genre I normally consume either, but Teeth in the Mist was a really fantastic audiobook. Highly, highly recommend it. Truly Devious, we already knew messed me up a lot. In addition to loving the covers in the series, the audiobooks for this trilogy are fantastic. The Truly Devious one is really, really great. I feel like it does a good job of differentiating when you're listening the past timeline with the present timeline, but just in general, I think the narration is really, really fantastic in both timelines, and The Vanishing Stair just kind of continued on with that really, really good quality audiobook narration that Truly Devious gave me before. So you should absolutely consume this series, period. But I feel like it's just like the audiobooks are fantastic. Like it just, I know that's kind of like a repeat, but like it's fantastic. This series is just so good, and then the audiobooks did not disappoint me in the slightest. It helps really build the setting, helps build the mystery, and like kind of like dealing with like the creepy murdering kind of stuff going on the school. I'll Be Gone in the Dark was a book I was hesitant to pick up, but everyone has been raving about it, and then the Golden State Killer was caught, so I was like, you know what, Patton Oswalt's wife like wrote this, spent so much time before she died on this, and she died in such like a weird, unexpected, accidental sort of way, and I was like, I really do want to consume this. And then I saw that there's like a foreword and an afterword by Gillian, who is that author? Oh, I should just get the book. Gillian Flynn, that's what it is. And then her husband, Patton Oswalt, had written the afterword. And I think the afterword especially, they both narrate the audiobook part of that too. So that was really sweet to hear Patton talking about his wife and these kind of this. He it just seems like he has a big sense of pride in everything that she did and compiled, because she pulled so much work into this, with like no guarantee of being like recompensated. That's not a word. Compensated for everything that she did. And then we got him. And just reading all of the work that she did, and maybe part of it is because she's no longer around and she died so young and accomplished so much. And then hearing him being like, we got him, Michelle, like, you did all this work and we got him and you helped. I don't, maybe it's because it is more prevalent in the time period now because the court case is gearing up and there's supposed to be, I think, a Netflix documentary about it. It's heartbreaking that she passed away so young, and in the way that she did. It's kind of weird having written about a lot of people dying unexpectedly in different ways, but I just thought the foreword and the afterword were just so beautifully done and tied in. The information was laid out so clearly, and I think just because of what the content is, it made it easier to intake the information, and some of the violence, having the narration done to me, and it was not super dense. The narration wasn't like a monotone voice. I think they did a really good job of making this something that the general masses would want to consume, whilst all of which is a good marketing move, with all of the court hearings and everything going on, and now all these questions about like, when can we use DNA testing, like with the police, is this a trap, or is Ancestry and DNA or 23andMe like selling all of our DNAs? There's a whole discussion that's opened up, which I think is fascinating. But she lays out all this information and how everything is tied together, and all the science and all the police work, and she ties it in, and it blows my mind when we look back like 20 years ago at how like segregated a lot of the police forces were, and they didn't want to work with each other, and then people like this were able to abuse that because of that, and more people have died because of just pigheadedness sometimes, to work with other people. So I loved how she compiled all this stuff, and I'm so sad that she's not around anymore, because she could have done some amazing stuff with other cases. Send the Sends. This was a book that I just read because I've seen it a couple different places, and then I saw that Mel to the Any really enjoyed it too, and I was like, you know what? I'll give it a go. It's got some settings that I'm always curious about, and the audiobook is so good. It's a very weird like setting, and whole plot is messed up, but the audiobook narration is really, really fantastic. For some reason, I was able to like in my mind see like this weird spiraling tower and all these like weird doors shut off, and like these puzzle games with all this cast. It was like a giant game of Clue in this like 3,000 floor tower. It was weird, but the audiobook is fantastic, and something specific about it helped me like just build everything in my mind, which is kind of impressive considering like there's the setting is just so weird, and I don't know that I would ever like link it to anything else, or would I see it in my mind, I don't think, oh, that looks like this actual historical building. That's just not a thing. It's just I've somehow been able to construct this thing on its own in my mind. And my last book is The Mistwick School of Musicraft. So this is an Audible only release right now, but it is coming out in a physical copy on January 20th, I believe it is. This is the first book I've read by Jessica Corey. I owned one of her books. I ended up unhauling it because I just didn't seem to ever want to go pick it up. But this audiobook was so freaking good. So it's got a lot of Harry Potter influences with the magical school, but magic is wielded in the form of music. So some people compose, some produce, some play the instruments, and our main character gets kind of accidentally accepted into an academy, and there's a whole lineage reveal. But we have several scenes throughout the whole thing where there's music played in order to enable whatever magic is needed, and the audiobook has like a full choir do those things. So it's not just like, and music played. There's an actual whole section where this, like, I don't know what choir it was or what opera organization, whoever did it, they did a fantastic job. It's wonderful. It really, really does pull you into it. It gives a lot of fairy tale vibes because of that. I was able to remember like a lot of those movies as a kid, like is it Pied Piper and like Robin Hood for some reason. There's just a lot of really whimsical elements. It's a wonderful middle grade. I'm excited to actually physically pick it up and see what it looks like, but just love that they took the time and effort to hire musicians to do the actual music in the audiobook. It just adds so much elements. Anyways, those are my top 10 audiobooks that I read this year. If you have any that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments down below. I will link all of these books in the description box down below. I guess I'll link them to Audible. I guess that seems like the most logical places. I know Amazon's the demon, but we all know what Audible is. And I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, I will follow you back, and have a happy holidays and enjoy some audiobooks, and screw someone for shaming you for reading. I don't care what you're reading. I'm not going to shame you for like reading even if it's like 50 Shades of Grey, which, you know, if you want to consume media, I would rather you consume something rather than not read, because there's so many benefits to reading, and it could open up a whole new world for you.